About how I built my Notion meal planner and shopping list. And if you are new to Notion, like I am, this will also be a little bit of a tutorial on how relations and rollups and formulas work in Notion. So probably a somewhat medium, intermediate video, intermediate to advanced video, but good for folks that are just getting started out and kind of curious like I was. So what is a meal planner? There's a really cool template that was built by the Notion folks that you can just Google Notion meal planner. It's one of the first results. And basically, it's going to show you a list of meals for the week and the various grocery items associated with them. And it should generate a shopping list for you based on the meals that you've added. This template, though it seems cool, I actually had a lot of problems working with it. I found that when I was removing meals from the week that it was not updating the shopping list, and when I was adding recipes, it really just wasn't doing what I was expecting it to do. So you can try it, but it wasn't working for me, and it kind of led me astray. Another really good template that I found is this one by Jamie Butler. This one almost goes in the other direction. It works really, really well. I felt like it kind of did too much for me. It has a lot of really cool features. But again, being new to Notion, I was like, wow, this is sort of mental overload. I don't know if I'm actually going to use it, if it's too complicated. But I was really curious to figure out how it worked. And so thankfully, Jamie has made it essentially free and open source. And so I was able to clone it and kind of reverse engineer various aspects of it to understand what it was doing. So I kind of want to talk about the experience of reverse engineering this a little bit and what I learned along the way. So we're going to build our own simple meal planner over here. We'll start with a new page called Meal Planner. Give it a cool icon, like a bento box or something. Okay. And, first question that jumps to mind, should this be a page? Should this be its own table? And what I found there is that in Notion, when you start with something as a page, it means that it can contain other things. So a page can contain multiple databases and boards and things like that. Whereas if you start just by saying, I want this to be a table, then the only thing it can really be is a table. There are ways to work around that. You can sort of like drag things inside of, you could drag the table page inside of another page and kind of make it a linked database that way. But in general, I found that it's good to start with just a page. And inside of that page, I'm going to add one more page that I'm going to call backend. And this was something that I kind of learned. I looked at several meal planner templates, and I saw that a lot of people follow this this particular style for setting up sort of complicated Notion relationships. And I really like it, and I'll sort of show you why. So again, backend's just going to be its own page. And inside of backend, we can just start adding inline databases. And the nice thing about having them all in this one page is we can compare them to one another, and essentially lets us debug as we are working through things. It's a little bit easier seeing it all on one page versus having to jump back and forth between a bunch of different pages to be like, I think I remember what was in that column, but I'm not quite sure. So we're going to make a single page called backend. We're going to fill it with inline databases, and then we're going to create standalone pages, which just give us little views of those inline databases. It sounds weird. It'll make sense. So the first thing we'll do here is make an inline table. And we're going to call this one grocery items. So these are going to be all the things that make up a recipe. I'm also going to make this full width. And I'm going to switch it to monospace font to add hacker points and make the text a little bit smaller. Okay. So grocery items are going to be all the stuff that, both makes up a recipe and the stuff that we would put in our shopping cart. So one of the recipes that I like to make a lot is teriyaki salmon. So that takes salmon, it takes soy sauce, a bunch of other ingredients like sake and mirin and things like that. But we'll say generally that's what goes into it. Another recipe that I like to make sometimes is buttered corn. So I'll also add corn. Okay, so we got 3 grocery items in this table so far. And the next thing I want to do is associate them with some recipes. So we're going to create another inline table. And this one will be called recipes. Get rid of the tags column again. And the first recipe I want to add, so there's lots of great ways to add recipes, right? You can use like the Notion web clipper and things like that. In this case, I'm just going to like type them out really quick. So we'll say teriyaki salmon. And I need to connect my recipe to these grocery items. So the way that you connect two tables in Notion is creating a relation. And this is also what I found to be one of the sort of buggier aspects of Notion, or sometimes confusing. So when you create a relation between two tables, it's creating a two-way relationship, meaning it should create a column in both tables. So in this case, I'm gonna name this grocery items, set it to relation, select my grocery items database, and what I expect to happen is I should get another column over here in the grocery items database that says, ah yeah, I'm related to this recipes column. And now that we have this relationship, I can say, okay, teriyaki salmon, what goes into that? I can pull from this table. I can say, okay, salmon goes into that, and soy sauce goes into that. And now we see that that recipe is showing up for each of those individual grocery items. Now the reason I said this is kind of weird and buggy at times, and why I find it helpful to use a backend page like this, is I don't know if it's because Notion sometimes either fails to properly create the relationship, or the data just gets really stale and you have to refresh before you see the new column appear. But from time to time, I would go and I would create a relation, and I felt like I did not see the other column appearing in the other database. And sometimes it felt like, when I was adding items from one, they were not appearing in the other. So that may just be user error. It probably is. But having everything on a backend page like this makes it a little bit easier for me to verify very quickly that when I've created these relationships, they're working as I expect them to. So I'm going to rename this column right here to recipes, right? So I can tell, what objects are we talking about? How are they connected? Okay. The next thing I want to do is I want to create the actual weekly plan. So again, this will be another inline table. This will be our weekly meal plan. We are just going to add days of the week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Get rid of tags column because we're not going to use it right now, at least. And again, we want to create another relationship. So we're going to say that weekly plan uses recipes. All right, so that column appeared over there, which is good. Verify that it worked. Name this recipes. Name this weekly plan. And we'll say on Monday that we want to eat teriyaki salmon. So now it should appear in both places. And let's maybe add some other recipes too. So we're at Saburo Don. So normally Saburo Don takes like ground pork or ground chicken, but it also includes soy sauce. So we'll just say Saburo Don uses soy sauce as well. And we'll say we might do buttered corn, and that takes corn. Okay, I'm just trying to sort of create some data, create some relationships here. On Tuesday, we'll say that we're going to have Saburo Don. Okay. And we're going to leave Wednesday open right now. We're not going to use buttered corn at all. And that way, that'll help us actually debug our shopping list in just a little bit. So we've got grocery items, got recipes, got our weekly plan. The next thing we want to do, and this is where I just got so stumped and had the hardest time, is figure out, okay, from this data, how do I then generate a shopping list? And what I realized is I kind of want to work backwards a little bit. So I sort of need to know when each of these food items, when each of these grocery items, is being used during the week, right? So I kind of need this weekly plan information, but I need it all the way back here in grocery items. Now the nice thing is we know which recipes are associated with the grocery items, and the recipes know which day of the week they're used on. And so what we can do is use another really handy property from Notion called a rollup. And a rollup basically lets us sort of snatch some data from a table that we already have a relationship with. So since we already have a relationship with the recipes table from our grocery items table, we can say, all right, I would like the weekly plan info. So I go configure rollup. I say, okay, I'm already connected to the recipes table, so that's the relationship that I want to use, and the property that I want to copy over from it is the weekly plan. And so now I can see which days of the week I need salmon, when I need soy sauce, and I can see that since corn is not being used in any of the recipes in the weekly plan yet, that it is not needed any of the days of the week. Okay, cool. So now we need one last piece of information. We need like a flag of some kind to say, okay, something is used during the week, let's add it to our shopping list. So the last thing we're going to do here is add one more property called a formula. And a formula is where you write a little bit of logic to try and sort of, compute some value or some state based on the data that's in your table. If you've used Excel before, very similar, or if you've written any code in programming languages, similar idea. So what we want to say is when the weekly plan column is not empty, then I want to add an item to my shopping list. So in Notion, you can kind of scroll around here and find the logic that you want. So again, when the weekly plan column is not empty, add the item to my shopping list. Okay, so not empty weekly plan property. And then we just got to make sure to add the parentheses and hit done. And now we've got this little checkbox here that's setting this to true. And if we want to then make a shopping list, all we have to do is go down and we can add another database. And this time, rather than add a brand new database, we're going to do a linked database. And a linked database just means, hey, copy an existing database over to this area. So all I'm doing is I'm taking that grocery items database from up here. I'm literally just making a copy of it, which is what that little arrow means. And I'm not even copying it, I'm referencing it, I should say. So if I make a change to it here, it's going to change this item up here, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to add a view to it. And our view is going to be called shopping list. And again, we're doing this on the backend page, but you can do this on a standalone page, which is what I've done in my actual meal planner. But I kind of want to show it to you all here just so you can understand how this works. So we're creating a view called shopping list, and we're going to filter the view. And we're going to say, hey, if that shopping column has a checkbox, if it's true, then these items should be on my shopping list. Right? So since it's not true for corn is not being used at all this week, corn is not on my shopping list, but everything else is. Another cool thing that we can do here is we can add yet another property. So we can add a concept of if something is in your pantry or not. So again, I have a big bottle of soy sauce. I don't want to add soy sauce to my shopping list every week because I do a lot of cooking that uses soy sauce. So I'm going to add a pantry column. I'll just drag it over here. And I'll say, hey, soy sauce is already in my pantry. I don't need soy sauce to be added to the shopping list since I already have some. And so what we can do is then edit our shopping formula to say, hey, this checkbox should be checked only when the weekly plan column is not empty and the pantry checkbox is not checked. So in Notion, you can also do that. You can use an and clause right here, and you've just got to take two sort of true or false statements and wrap them in that and clause and separate them with a comma. So we'll jump to the front here and we'll say and. All right, so we'll kind of talk through this. We'll say the weekly plan column is not empty, comma, and the pantry property equals false. And that double equal sign means that, I'm comparing two values. If it was a single equal sign, it would be like you were trying to set a value. But in this case, we're just comparing two values. So when the pantry checkbox is not checked and the weekly plan column is not empty, then add an item to my shopping list. So now we can see that salmon is on the shopping list, soy sauce is not because the pantry checkbox is checked, corn is not because it's not part of the weekly plan. And we can see that verified down here in that filtered view of the shopping list that we created as well. So that is like the functioning backend. Now we have the logic that does all the things that we want. And so now we can actually just make standalone pages that refer to all of this data. And we can make these nice and pretty, right? So so we can say, okay, cool. Now I want a recipes page, and I want it to be a really pretty gallery and whatever. But the way to do that is I'm just going to link to those existing databases, right? So I've got that recipes database that I created, right? Here it is right here. Can make it full width. We can switch it to gallery view, right? And now we can make it sort of this pretty thing that we want. We can start adding images, using Unsplash, or if you're using like the Notion clipper and things like that, right? You can add, you can just add stuff here. I'm looking for a salmon. It's probably going to show me an actual salmon. Here we go. Delicious salmon. Boom. Okay. It's probably not teriyaki salmon, but it'll work. It'll work for a demo. Yeah. Oh, wait. Here we go. Hold on. Last little bit. Let's make this thing. So we're going to say card preview should use the cover. I can make it small. There you go. All right. So now we're able to, again, we're just linking to those databases, but now we can have our recipes. We can have our meal planner on a standalone page. We can have our shopping list on a standalone page. Just by referring to or linking to the databases that we built out in our backend. And we can always go back here when we want to, again, since these links are, these are references, meaning any changes we make here get reflected on the backend and vice versa. We can always go back to this page to debug things if stuff seems to get weird or wonky or just isn't working as we expected. So yeah, again, kind of a deep dive into Notion, but hopefully if you are new to it like I am, and you're curious how to build these complicated relationships, hopefully this was helpful for you, and you can go make some awesome meals this week. Thanks.